Alright, I am back with my first real video of Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Now that it is actually out, technically it is early access, but if you could pay money for a game and you can play the game, it's out. So we can call it what you want, but the game has been released. Whole thing about review codes, how there aren't any. I got my review code a couple of hours ago, like almost a day since the game is actually live in places like New Zealand, because of the rolling time launches. Whatever, it's something. There's no Metascore, there's no user scores, so it's just sort of people's impressions as they play. So this is my impression as I play, and yeah, okay. So I'm not like immediately bowled over by it, but I think there are some good aspects to it. I don't even know if I'm past the alpha content yet. I don't think I am. I'm outrunning. I just did a mission where you're in a flying vehicle. I'm not going to post footage because of spoilers or whatever. It's probably like the most spoiled game I think I've ever seen, like just everywhere online. So I will avoid that for now. But I have assembled the Suicide Squad, got my costumes, unlocked skill points, unlocked loot, set up headquarters. Now I got vehicles. I think I just unlocked weapon crafting, and now I just got like free reign of the map in terms of I can do the Waller mission, or I can go do some other mission or something like that. So what has stood out to me is first impressions of gunplay are very positive. I really am enjoying how gunplay feels. I have this on Steam, but right when you log in, they're like, use a controller. You definitely should use a controller. So I'm using a controller. I have my Xbox controller plugged into my computer here, which is not something I normally do. Normally I just sort of ignore that, but I'm not even going to try with the keyboard if they're really that adamant about it. And the control's great. I have played pretty much, well, I've done 3 out of the 4 heroes in the main campaign. I've only done Deadshot's tutorial right now. What's interesting is the game sets up certain missions, whether they be main missions or side missions, to like overcharge a hero, where that hero, if you use them, will get a bunch of like special bonuses. So like you think you can have a main, but you can't really have a main if you're trying to go along with that kind of stuff. You're trying to level kind of everybody equally. So as you've seen, this is very vertical combat, and the traversal aspect of it is interesting. It's a little early for me to make a full judgment on traversal one way or the other. It's kind of weird because each of these 4 heroes has their own really unique traversal system. It's not really just like Marvel's Avengers where like 2 heroes fly, everyone else runs along the ground and jumps high. Like, it's more complicated than that, and I'm not going to go through the whole tutorial of like how everyone moves, but it's kind of weird because the game sets you up with a tutorial for all 4 characters at the beginning using the various traversal mechanics, and then as you go through the like rotating through characters in the main story, like you have to remember all of the controls. Like I can't even remember how to do the King Shark melee slam, so I gotta look that up again. You're really forgetting a lot of the things you learn in the tutorial just because you're jumping around characters, and it's hard. There's like 3 or 4 or 5 components to each person's traversal. I was going to quote main Harley, but I've been jumping around. Harley controls like Spider-Man, but worse, sort of. She has her own grapple swinging hook, which has like momentum and things, and she can do sort of the Batman ledge jump where she zip lines to a ledge and then kind of leaps off of it. It's a little harder to control than I would say Captain Boomerang, just teleporting to where he throws his boomerang, or King Shark, which just has like really, really high jumps, and then Deadshot has a jetpack. So traversal's neither here nor there, but I'm curious how it feels once I get more used to it, and if there are upgrades that significantly play into traversal. Gunplay, I think, is where it really shines. I really do think it feels great to play really any of these characters. I was a little unsure about how like the melee shield harvest system, where like you shoot enemies in the legs and then they end up like being able to be downed, so you melee them and get your shield back because your shield will not recharge otherwise. Reminds me of Doom, where you do a fatality or whatever it's called, and a mass, I don't remember what it's called, but like that's how you get your health back. It's a little like that. Even in this playing just a short time, it does get sort of easier to find those enemies to shield harvest, even though it's a little bit chaotic on the screen with the UI, so that's not terrible. Just the guns feel great to shoot. There's something really fun about these aerial kills you can do, and like popping an enemy up and then immediately swapping to like a shotgun and blowing them away. A lot of the animations are really cool. I really like Harley Quinn's cartwheel dodge. Just a lot of little minor things like that that feel like a lot of fun. I've only We're just dabbling in loot now, so there's not really a way to gauge, this as a looter shooter. I would say that I have a few questions about this because right now it only really feels like you're getting loot from end of mission rewards, which is not like unheard of in a looter shooter, and like all looter shooters have end of mission rewards, but so far there do not seem to be loot rewards that just drop in the wild or like engrams or whatever that drop from enemies, which I don't really love that. Like, it would be nice to kill a person and have a weapon drop. So I don't know 100% if that's not a thing that's coming in the future. But as of now, the only way I've gotten loot are through mission rewards. I am way too early in the skill tree to like really figure out how that's going to change builds. I will say that I'm impressed with how good combat feels despite not having any unlocks. That to me says that once you do get the unlocks and whatever, it may feel even better. The game overall, though, I'm not sure. Right now, it's a lot of cutscenes. It's a lot of the Suicide Squad trying to be funny, and sometimes it works. I think Boomerang and King Shark have had a couple good moments. Deadshot's kind of the straight man. Harley is Harley. Harley has my favorite voice work just because we've heard Tara Strong as Harley for so long, and she's the most familiar character. But this to me kind of suffers from Avengers syndrome, where you've just taken, that game took a bunch of Avengers characters that we've seen in the MCU for all this time, totally recast them, and then tried to make that work, which sometimes it did. But here, we just came off of the last Suicide Squad movie where we had at least a couple of these characters in there. We had all of them, I think. Well, Boomerang died, didn't he? We had all of them, but these are like not as good versions of the James Gunn ones, which were like legitimately funny. So it's sort of a tough comparison point where it's like, yeah, it's okay, but even getting through some of the segments that like the alpha people were raving about, like there's this one thing with Batman where he stalks you, and like it's fine. There's nothing really that has stood out to me about this story so far, and I'm hoping there are some more twists and turns than like Suicide Squad, kills the Justice League, as we know they're supposed to, and also is obviously trying to escape from Waller's grasp and all that. Like, I'm really curious as to where the story goes, just past those two pretty basic elements. I've heard the story is something like 8 to 10 hours long, which is not terrible. I mean, I think that's just if you're just focusing on the main story as opposed to doing one of the many side missions. In terms of how the overall open world feels, I feel like this is where, even though if moment to moment combat feels pretty good, the open world itself feels a little bit strange. There's all these just like kind of little mini clusters of enemies, and then there are these, dedicated hotspot places on the map where, think like Spider-Man crimes or something like that with maybe a little bit more involved objectives. And while Spider-Man crimes are fine, you're not exactly like farming the living hell out of those because Spider-Man's a live service game. Not a live service game. Here, these seem like the kind of missions that you're going to be, told to grind out repeatedly in order to farm for loot, farm for XP, like this and that. And I just don't know how that's going to feel over time. In general, with all the verticality and how combat works, it's kind of a combination of Crackdown and Prototype, and those games have their fans, but I'm not sure if that's going to have the kind of broad appeal that this game could have had otherwise. Is something a little less arcadey. The city is interesting. It just feels like the city feels more like an obstacle right now, where you're trying to get a hang of these traversal systems, and they're different across each character, and like each time you switch, you kind of have to like relearn, and you're just sort of like desperately trying to avoid falling all the way to the ground. Think like Spider-Man, but like you fall to the ground a lot more often than you want to, and it's just not quite as intuitive. Again, this is something that can change in time, but as of right now, again, with the very minimal early unlocks, it doesn't feel like there's that much differentiation between the characters other than traversal, because as we all know, the main crux of this is all characters use, the same guns. Everyone is gun focused, whether you're using a heavy machine gun or a pistol or a shotgun or an SMG or whatever. Everyone's main moment-to-moment combat is using these two guns. And, well, people may use different melee weapons or whatever. Everyone has the same sort of melee mechanics for the most part. The one difference I've seen so far is some sort of like super move that characters do once you build up enough adrenaline, what it's called. But to me, this is a contrast to Avengers that does not really feel favorable, where the difference between, the Avengers heroes was really significantly different combat kits. And you might like some, you might not like others, but you could bounce around between those. And it wasn't really the traversal that was the main point of difference, it was the combat. And here, at least right now, it is the traversal that is wildly different, and how that feels is wildly different than the actual combat, because you're landing, you're meleeing, you're shooting, like that part feels all kind of the same right now. Again, with different builds, different gear, different skill alignments, maybe that'll change. That's just sort of my first impression here. And that is something you don't really see that often in this space with class-based shooters. Like, think of any game with classes: Outriders, Borderlands, Anthem, like even Destiny. Destiny's probably one of the least, diversified class setups. It's like different jumps, and then, everyone has kind of the same grenades, different melee, different super, and then like, skill modification nodes. And that got a lot more progressive, in the 3.0 updates for subclasses. But here, so far, they feel very, very similar to one another in a way that doesn't really feel faithful to their character kits. It just feels faithful to them trying to make this a looter shooter and trying to give you a reason to find guns. Where Avengers did have a problem with being a looter, because you would find all these things like a legendary Hulk's ribcage, and like it just wouldn't really make any sense. Like you could craft a new build with it, but there was no actual loot. Whereas Suicide Squad wants to take the Borderlands route, at least, of having, interchangeable guns, even if, you don't have armor, you don't have, this other stuff. But that is, sort of the way you diversify is just through the guns. But I'm really hoping that as time goes on, there will be more to differentiate these characters significantly than just traversal. But that is, I'd say, one of my biggest points of contention right now. The overall vibe I'm getting from this is that it is probably not going to succeed as a live service. I think, like, reactions I'm seeing are kind of mixed, like maybe mixed to positive. It really depends where you look. Some people are saying, "Oh, everyone I'm seeing says it's a blast," or I'm not seeing any positive comments on this at all. Like, this is, where things go when you don't have user reviews open, you don't have review embargoes dropping. It's just this giant free-for-all of like, who knows what the conversation is. Like, it depends who you follow, so whatever. It's just sort of chaos out there. The impression I get is that I think this might be something that is perfectly fine to play start to finish, maybe play around a little bit at the end, but I would be amazed if people are going to put more time into this than, most people, than like Spider-Man or Arkham or like a normal superhero game that is not a live service. Because to hook people on a live service, you have to hook people, and you have to just not make it so, they kind of had a good time with the campaign and, that was nice, see you later. You have to like really, really make them want to keep playing. It is not impossible that like the game will get there by the end. It's just the general impression I am getting, the general vibe I feel, and someone who is really eager, really, really eager to, have a new looter shooter to grind out consistently. I'm not getting that initial like, oh yeah, this is it, like absolutely, like all the way. It's kind of slow going at the beginning here. Like, you don't even unlock loot or skill points into like an hour into the game at least. So I'm not going to fully judge it now. It's just my first impression is like, I don't know if this is going to do what they want it to do. And it will have a niche dedicated hardcore crowd, but like a lot of failed looter shooters had a dedicated hardcore crowd that Still really liked it, and it still failed. Like, I had 200 hours New Avengers. Like, problems and all, I put a lot of time into that, but like, that did not do well. Anthem died. Like, it feels like this is more on the trajectory to me of an Anthem and an Avengers than a Destiny and a Warframe or a, I don't know, Diablo, Borderlands, whatever live service you want to come up with that has lasted a long time. I know they're going to have at least a year of content planned, so like kind of no matter what, it's going to go that long. But just based on what I've seen, kind of based on what I'm hearing, I would be surprised if this was a kind of long-term live service must-play hit in this genre. It is very early, so I will caveat that with this, and it is possible that like gunplay and people mastering traversal gets the game far enough where yes, by the end it is addicting. You have all these cool gear sets, you have all the builds and all the stuff, and it gets a lot more engaging. Like you can't judge Destiny 2 when you're geared out in blues. You got to get a little deeper into it, but it's just the vibe I'm getting. And I don't know if it'll turn out to be accurate, but I just can share my first impressions here. I will continue playing tonight, tomorrow, probably have an article about it tomorrow, probably have another video. I know I doubled my playtime. What do I think now? I want to know what you guys think. If you have early access, if you've been playing, let me know what you think in the comments. Again, my overall takeaways is that I think gunplay feels really snappy. I am less sure about kind of everything else, but I guess we'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.